Welcome to the Live Life Well podcast for busy women. As a busy mum myself, I understand how hard it can be to look after ourselves. But hopefully this is a space for you to take time out, find connection, and get some simple takeaways to live life well, mind, body and soul. Let's jump in. Welcome to the Live Life Well podcast for busy women. And whatever you're doing, where you're listening, if you're driving, if you're cooking dinner, if you're sitting down with a cuppa, we just welcome you here and just welcome you to take some time for you and to get some takeaways on how you can take care of yourself, because you're wonderful and you deserve to be taken care of. So hope this is a bit of space and time for you to learn how to do that more as you deserve. And I'm really thrilled to be joined on this episode by my wonderful friend, Hannah Mason, who also happens to be an amazing sleep coach from her business, Dusk to Dawn. And at Dusk to Dawn, Hannah, you empower parents with knowledge that brings good sleep to the whole family, because sleep, we're big fans of sleep here. It's very important, just, but you've also got a real focus on mental health for the whole family, which I love, and bringing hope to families that are struggling and helping them to thrive, not to survive those early years. So basically, the friend I wish I had 8 years ago, but we're that's so good. So welcome, Hannah. Have I missed anything out? Is there anything else you want to tell us about the amazing work you do? Maybe just tell us, how you got into it. Where did this passion for helping families come from?
I think it mostly came out of my own experience of having, so I've got two girls, and I had my first daughter in 2018, and I think coming into motherhood just felt like such a shock that I just wasn't really prepared for in sort of every area of my life. And so I think part of there's lots of reasons why I kind of retrained as a sleep coach, but I also do lots in perinatal mental health, because they're two areas that I really struggled in my own parenting journey, and just felt like I was a secondary school teacher before I had the girls, and I think I just felt like actually becoming a mum, having maternity leaves, just gave me an opportunity to think about whether there was something else I wanted to do. And it was to think about making sure families had the support and access to information to kind of help in those early years of parenting, because it was just, I found it such a shift in so many areas of my life. So I think, that kind of underpins that driving force to kind of want to help families now.
So you've been there, you understand the challenges, and let's just get out there. It's really hard, isn't it? Those early years are very hard, very exhausting. And I think as moms, we can often beat ourselves up for finding them hard and almost feel kind of shameful about that. I know I really struggled too, especially after my second one. I'm pretty sure I had some postnatal depression. Just found it so overwhelming, that massive shift. So I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations. And I mean, this episode really is for the mums. We're going to be talking about the kind of impact of motherhood on us as women. But I hope you listen if you are not yet a mum, because we need to support our mums, don't we? We need to be there for the mums out there, and we're all part of that village that it takes. So I think this is just really important stuff to talk about.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Such a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this one. So as a busy mom and someone who has their own business and helps other people, can you just tell us what living life well means to you?
I think if I'm really honest, I'm still figuring that out. As I sat down to kind of think about this, I thought, actually, I'm not sure if I've really got there yet. I think for me, it's about having balance, and I'm not sure, I have fully figured all of that out. But I think having that balance between work and life at home with the girls in these kind of early years, making time for myself in all of that as well, making time for my husband. It is a lot of pull on your time, isn't it, and your resources. And I think I probably haven't always had the right balance, and things can kind of quickly feel off kilter. But I think if I really kind of felt like I was living my life well, it would be kind of having a balance in each of those different areas. So those different cups being sort of,
Or
sort of
evenly
equal.
distributed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
that's
I
such a
think
balance.
that is very, very much an ideal, and I think actually is really hard. And I definitely haven't found a way to do that completely well yet. So, but I am learning and I'm trying, but I think particularly they're kind of figuring out what I need in
Mm.
it all, not just what everyone else needs and what work needs from me and what the girls need from me. It's just trying to think where's my space? What do I need? How can I look after myself? Things like, how am I eating well? Like, you know. So I think, yeah, it's a trying to find that balance, and it's a journey for sure that I am slowly but surely figuring out.
Yeah,
So
and it really is a journey. And I think the idea of balance is really tricky because that changes, doesn't it? I don't think there's any such thing as
yes,
like a perfect balance is there, and it changes depending on what's going on for our lives, what stage of life we're at.
yeah,
And we're going to be going on to talk about this in a minute, but it is
yeah,
partly kind of rediscovering who you are now and what you need as a mum
yes,
and a business owner and a wife, because that changes, doesn't it? And
yes, exactly.
discovering what it is you need to feel well. But we're constantly sort of adjusting and kind of experimenting, aren't
Yeah,
we? So I think really it's partly embracing that journey, isn't it? Doing that little bit of work,
yeah, that's
stepping
it.
back and taking time and thinking, what is it I need in this season? How can I
Yeah,
nourish myself well, like physically, mentally, spiritually? But
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely a
that's it.
journey.
Yeah.
We're all on that journey. I don't think any of us have got it
Oh, I
totally figured out
know, I
yet.
know. I don't think so, no.
Especially when you like what you work in sleep patterns, when you've still got little ones and their sleep patterns are changing, that's going to change what you
Yes.
need and what you can do, what's sort of achievable,
Yes,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it ebbs and flows and changes, like you
Yeah,
said, as kind of
yeah,
month on month. But I think just trying to have an awareness of
yeah.
what maybe feels out of kilter at a certain point in time can be quite helpful, I think, for me. That's what I'm learning anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like what you're saying, like living well is just stopping to do those little regular check-ins with yourself,
Yeah, yeah,
noticing where you're at and what you need in that moment, and
yes, yeah,
prioritizing that, because becoming a mum almost like steals that. You become consumed with looking after these little people, and then it
yeah.
gets to the point where they're getting a little bit bigger and you're like, oh, I'm still here, I still have needs, so what are they?
Yes,
No.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That is it. That is it. Yeah.
Amazing, such good points. So today we're going to be talking about this concept called matrescence, and this is something that you introduced me to, Hannah. I had not heard of this word, but when you told me about it, I was like, yes, that makes so much sense, and that is something we should be talking about. So can you just explain what that term means and why is it important that we talk about it?
Yeah, so I think obviously it's tricky, isn't it? Because obviously I am a sleep coach, but I think because I do a lot in perinatal mental health and just a lot of work. I mean, I do work with mums and dads, but primarily it's mums. I think since having my babies, I had this kind of just this massive jolt in expectation versus reality of being a mum. And
Mm.
I've spent the kind of last 6 years really trying to understand more about motherhood and my own journey of it, but actually then the broader journey of motherhood for lots of mums that I'm kind of coming into contact with either through my sleep work or through my perinatal mental health work. And so I do lots of reading. I'm quite geeky. I do lots of reading, and I came across this term. There's a great book which I will talk about at the end, but yeah, this term matrescence, and I just felt like it embodied so much. And it was like, when you have a light bulb moment, you're like, oh, it's not just me, this is a thing. So essentially I think that matrescence is literally, the term just means becoming a mother. It's that transition into motherhood. um, and there's been various kind of bits of research in it, but actually it kind of goes right back to the term was first coined in the 1970s by a lady called Dana Raphael, and she kind of hit the nail on the head, really, that she basically was saying there's no other point in in an adult's life where you go through such a seismic shift. So there's lots of focus on adolescence. There's lots of research on adolescence where we know about teenagers that go through these kind of physical changes, these emotional changes, these social changes, with their peer groups and all these hormones and their body changes, their friendship, a huge identity shift. And what this lady kind of started talking about in the 70s was, well, hang on, the same thing happens to a woman when she becomes a mum, right? Her body changes, her hormones change, her identity changes, her social circle changes. There's this massive shift and no one's talking about it. And then it kind of got buried for years and years and years. And the focus was very much on what happens to the baby. When you have a baby, what's going on with the baby? And in the last probably only the last 10 years or so, there's been more of a focus on, well, what's happening to the mother? Like, what's actually going on with the mother? And I think when we think about why it's important, I think we have this ideal of motherhood, what we think we're going to be like, which for me was very much this kind of, I'll be very patient, I'll be doing all the crafts, I'm going to be this, like, I'm going to be baking all the time with my children, and it's just going to be beautiful and wholesome. And the reality was, there was some baking, but it was really messy and chaotic and stressed me out.
So
and there
stressful.
was some craft, but I got stressed out about the Play-Doh colours mixing. And I was like, what? Why am I like this? This isn't the motherhood I thought it would be. And I think for lots of mums, there's this tension where we kind of have this idealized version of motherhood that we thought we would have. And the reality is that it's this complete roller coaster. It's beautiful and it's ugly and messy. And it's really hard. And sometimes it's really easy, and sometimes it's really tedious and boring, and sometimes it's really exciting. And I think it's just not talked about, the kind of this transition to kind of understanding what's going on for yourself in that transition to becoming a mum. So that kind of all those shifts, your identity shifts, your expectations shifting, your body changing, and it being okay that you don't go back to what you were pre-baby. All the physical changes, but also all the social changes. So many mums talk about loneliness in motherhood, and that's because their whole social world has kind of changed. Suddenly, before maybe you were going out for drinks with colleagues and having fairly intellectual conversations, and now you're at baby groups talking about how many naps your baby does a day and what colour their poo is. And you're like, is this like, I feel like my brain has and it has. And I think, so there's this kind of, you go through this massive transition, but it's not talked about enough. And I think the other part of it in terms of why it's important is that we're in a mental health crisis. We've got so many mums struggling, one in five have a mental health illness. 70% of mums downplay their symptoms. There's still so much guilt and shame and stigma attached to saying, this is hard and I don't always enjoy it. I think we still have this perception of motherhood that's got to be very self-sacrificial. You've got to give everything of yourself. You've got to be really present with your children all the time. You've got to do gentle parenting all the time. And so when you are at your wit's end because you haven't had many of your own needs met and you don't understand any of that, you lose it with the kids, you shout, and then you have this kind of wave of guilt because you think, I'm a terrible mum, I'm not, this expectation of what I thought it was going to be like, and the reality is different, and I don't understand that. So I think it's understanding, leaning into that to try and understand what happens to us when we become mums, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. How have we changed? What are our needs now? And how can we lean into that to kind of understand more about this motherhood journey, I guess.
Yeah, wow, when you think about all of those changes we go through and how much of an impact that has on us physically and mentally, then no wonder so many of us find it so hard and struggle with our mental health and our emotions and all these things. So it's so good to talk about this because it makes you realize you're not alone going through this. Like you weren't a bad mum if you felt like this, or if you're feeling like that now, you're just juggling all the things and you're also exhausted and not putting your own needs first because you literally can't, because you have a little tiny person depending on you. So no wonder it's hard. Like it is hard. We have to put that out there. And I loved when you explained this to me before about how it has a similar impact to like adolescence or menopause. Like the change in our bodies is that big. It's as big, if not bigger, like you said. So could you just tell us a little bit about the science behind it? Like what does happen to our bodies, our hormones, our mood? or yeah, all those kind of things. Because it helps
Yeah,
me to understand if I hear a bit of the science to know what's going on
yeah.
and to know what to do about it, how to help myself.
Yeah. So there's more research being done all the time. And I think, even in the last 5 years or so, there's really been a big push for research into a mother's brain, for example. And that's really only coming about now, even though what's crazy is that this was kind of first coined in the 70s. And you think, how have we gone, 50 years and we're still kind of going, oh, this is a new thing and we should look at this. But so there's lots of research in terms of this, the kind of more about understanding the science of it, and things like, for example, some women get, it would be different for, obviously different for every woman, but there's things like, last year alone, we've only just understood why some women get things like hyperemesis. Some women have some morning sickness, some have it really severely, and we've only just started to understand why some get it more severely. And it's about a specific hormone that those women who experience it are carrying. But there's still a long way to go in terms of understanding that. I've had to make some notes on this so I didn't forget any of the good bits for you. But there are research to show that things like there are 14 different hormones that really ramp up in pregnancy, and some of those hormones increase by 200 or 300 times the amount pre-pregnancy. There's research around things like, you may have already know some of these things, but things like that we carry the eggs of our, if you have a girl, you are carrying the eggs already of your potential future grandchildren. So, even just understanding the kind of, that actually this isn't just a pregnancy for now, but it's like they're understanding more about fetal development and future genetics and all of that kind of stuff. You carry a third more blood in your body. Towards the end of pregnancy, there's research to show that your hormones help you start to relax more, to basically reduce cortisol. And during late pregnancy, there's research to show that things like you developed heightened ability to identify emotions in facial expressions more.
Wow.
So there's certain hormone surges, and it means you're able to read facial expressions more, which is, I mean, that's just so bizarre, isn't it? And
Amazing.
they still don't really understand why our bodies are doing all these things. They think it's a kind of protection thing. Your brain kind of helps you to become more vigilant. There's research that shows that your brain actually physically changes shape. So this research only came out in 2017. So again, it's this thing of like, we're really only just starting to scrape the surface of this. But in 2017, this research came out to show that there's a reduction in grey matter in your brain, and it physically changes shape and size. And they think it's to do with helping your brain kind of reorganize and kind of streamline things, kind of making your brain more efficient. So there's this whole thing around mum brain where you just become really forgetful, but actually there's research that's now saying you don't just become really forgetful and stupid. Your brain is actually doing something incredible to kind of streamline and focus on that caregiving ability for having a baby, which is amazing when you think the kind of cultural narrative is you just become really forgetful and a bit stupid. And when you actually, the science is saying, no, actually your brain is streamlining to just focus on a caring ability for a baby. It's amazing. And your brain can become more efficient, more flexible. There's also research to show things like during pregnancy, your body exchanges fetal cells. I don't know if you've seen anything about this, but there's research to show, scientific research to show that fetal cells remain in your body for 10, 20, 30 years. And there was a research paper in 2012 that showed that 63% of the mothers they did their research on they found fetal cells in their brains. So there's this kind of cell transformation between you and your baby that goes on, that lasts for decades. And the really interesting part is that they still don't, again, we're just scraping the surface. They don't fully understand what these cells do, because some of them have been found in the like healing sites of your body. So for example, and I love this because I had two C-sections and I carried a lot of feelings of guilt and failure. I'd had C-sections. But what's amazing is they found the cells of your fetus in the healing tissues of a C-section wound.
Amazing.
So you just think that's like amazing. So yeah, so I mean there's again, there's more research around things like that postpartum isn't just this kind of 6 week, we have this 6 week checkup, don't we, which is essentially to check you've healed and you're ready to kind of crack on with life. And the reality is there's more and more research is saying actually that shift you go through when you become a mum lasts for decades. Like some of it obviously only, you know, the healing of your body might take a few years, but other parts like the shape and the size of your brain and you know, that can have a longer lasting impact. And so it is, yeah, I think it's incredible, and I think there's so much more to be done in really understanding. There's a lot really still left to be understood, but that gives you a little taster.
I love it. I love the science. I'm a bit geeky too, so it's so fascinating. Isn't it just incredible though, that bond between a mother and a baby? Like you literally you share cells and you're left with them and you're literally never the same, but we're made to feel that we should just be the same and crack on. And I thought it was so interesting what you said about the brain changing its kind of focus. So yeah, you might be made to feel like you're a bit dozy or forgetful, but actually you're becoming more efficient at other things. So that part of your brain might not be operating quite where it was, but the other things you're doing better because you're focusing on what's important to keep your baby alive. So that's a bit of a stigma around mums, isn't it? Oh yeah, like mum brain, you're just not quite as good as you were before you had a baby, but actually you're better, really. You're more like you got superpowers, haven't you?
I know. I think it's great.
But so there's some really beautiful things you've shared about that exchange between a mother and a baby, but there's also a lot of that which kind of takes its toll, doesn't it? You know, growing a baby,
for sure,
recovering afterwards, and what that box ticked off after 6 weeks, like you're fine, you can go now, but actually you're just starting to learn what life is like with this little person. So are there anything about that sort of postpartum part which like has that sort of longer lasting effects on our physical and mental well-being that we should be aware of?
I mean, gosh, there's so many. I'm not sure where to start, Jo.
Or like the big thing.
I think, I mean, we have this kind of bounce back culture, which I think is not helpful. I think some mums are able to go back to their pre-baby weight and figure very, very quickly, and great, happy days if that's what you can do. But I think for a lot of mums, I think there's this pressure to get back to your pre-baby self. And that might even not just be physically, that might be getting back to your old social life or getting back into work again. Or there's this kind of thing of like, we'll just get back to what you were pre-baby. I think because you have such a massive shift and it can be such a shock, even if you're loving it and enjoying having a baby and it's all lovely. I think there's still this kind of societal and cultural expectation that you get back, and I don't understand why we have to go back, why we can't reframe our thinking and think we're going forward. You have a baby, your life can't look exactly as it did before, unless you're very, very wealthy and you can have lots of nannies and all that kind of stuff. But for the 99% of us, our life fundamentally changes when you have a child to care for and to navigate, and I think there's just this concept of going back, either physically or socially or emotionally. It's just I personally find unhelpful, because I'm not sure you can fully go back. So yeah, I don't know if that does that fully answer it. I mean, there's so many other things.
Oh no, I know, but it's such an interesting point you raised about that expectation. I remember being pregnant with my first little one, who's 10 now, and just naively thinking I would just carry on exactly as normal. I just strap it up to my hip and crack on with life. But oh my goodness, what a shock I got. And I'm just laughing at what you were saying earlier about all these like ideas you're going to have as a mum. I thought I was going to be that Pinterest mum, crafts,
Same.
baking, no screens, no sugar. Oh my goodness, what a joke. Like I've done everything that I said I wasn't going to do.
Yeah.
And we avoid
Yeah.
baking and painting because we don't want mum shouting at them. That's not good. So
No.
yeah, I think let's talk about that sort of societal pressure. I mean,
Mm,
oh my goodness, we've just got so much more to deal with, I think, now than ever, don't we, as mums,
yeah.
with the pressure to be mums and have a career and to look after ourselves. And we're big advocates of looking after ourselves on this podcast, obviously, but even
Yes.
that in itself can feel like a pressure. Like sometimes there's just times where you don't have that time, and sometimes it can just help to trust that that's the season that you're in that will pass,
Yeah.
and there will be more time as your little ones get a little bit older, or maybe just find those little
Mm,
things you can do just to take that little bit of care of yourself. But there's just a lot of
yeah.
pressure, isn't there? But I
Yeah.
love this idea that you're saying of we can't go back. Like I was wrong to think
Mm,
I could carry on as I was because, like you said, I was not the same person once I gave birth. I was a different
mm,
person. My hormones were different. My brain was different. My energy was very different.
yeah.
So I love the idea of thinking about how to go forward. And I'd love us just to like sort of
Mm,
hold space for the people listening to think about that right now. Like, where are you and how do you want to go forward? Because we do have a say in that,
mm,
don't we? If we stop and think about our situation and to know that not everything is out of our control, but there's always an invitation to think about what your life is like and kind of what you want it to like go
yeah.
forward, kind of embracing and accepting that
Mm,
impact and the changes that motherhood has had on you, because actually it is an amazing, beautiful thing, like you said, but it's
yeah.
also difficult and challenging. It's all the things. So,
Yes. Yeah.
um, yeah. So just thinking about those pressures and how unhelpful they can be. But
Mm,
how do you think, Hannah, that we can start to sort of move forward, like listening to what you're saying and that acknowledging that impact that all these things will have had on us? But how do we sort of start to rediscover who we are now that we are mothers,
mm,
and how can we start to move forward and just make that little bit of time to take care of ourselves?
mm. Yeah,
A big
I
question.
think the first, I mean, there's a few things, but I think that that first thing is for me is about getting curious about
Mm,
your journey into motherhood, because it will look different for all of us, and every single mum will struggle with different parts of motherhood. So some will love the kind of being at home and the being creative, some will be desperate to go back to work, and others really won't. So it will look really different, but I think get kind of curious and understand what it is you are struggling with, or what you feel like you might need support with, or just that kind of, where do you feel your pressure points are, and I mean there's some great kind of motherhood resources out there, but I think that, like you said, there is a lot of pressure. We're kind of in this intensive motherhood phase that I think is particular to kind of the last 10 years or so, where we're trying to do all the gentle parenting, we're trying to be present, we're trying to smash our careers and be the kind of CEOs, and the reality is like I'm not sure you can do it all. I mean, there are people out there who say they're doing it all, but I think it comes back to what are you finding hard, and why are you finding it hard? So is it your emotions? Is it that you're struggling with anger and rage, which I speak to so many mums struggling with anger and rage that they don't talk about, which is always down to their kind of unmet needs.
mm,
But I think, or is it that you're struggling with the balance between looking after children and childcare and working, which is a current struggle of mine at the moment, kind of juggling two jobs and having the girls. But I think, like, get curious. What is it that you're struggling with? What are the parts that get interested in your own journey, and what it's looked like for you, and the bits you've enjoyed and the bits you've not enjoyed, and then start to think about why you've not enjoyed them or why you're
mm,
struggling. Because then when you understand that, that's when you can start to think, what do I need to change that? So I think, get curious about it would be my kind of first thing. The second thing I think is about what's going to make the most difference for you.
mm.
So, it might feel unmanageable to make changes right across the board in every area of life. But think what's gonna make the most difference for you. So for some of my friends recently, they've got like a cleaner once a month, because that just eases the pressure a little bit. Or they've got like a hello. I remember when I went back after maternity leave when I'd had my first, and I was going back into teaching, and it was full on, and my husband was traveling lots. And the thing that I felt was going to make the biggest difference, the bit that I found was going to stress me out, was all the meal prep and how I was going to do the nursery run and cook dinner and prep lunch and stuff for the next day. And so to make that a bit easier, we got like a HelloFresh box just for those 2 days. I was 2 nights for the 3 days I was working, if that makes sense. And it was just like, it wasn't a massive change, but it actually made a really massive difference to my mental well-being, to my kind of juggle, to kind of bring that balance. So I think figuring out little steps, what things are going to make the biggest impact for you and your family. And then I think, sharing the load, I think, is such a big, and we could do a whole podcast on this alone, I'm sure, but that kind of thing of sharing the load at home if you've got a partner at home, I think often, before you have a baby, there's that kind of division of labor. You kind of have your flows and your rhythms, and then you have a baby and you're off on maternity leave, and so maybe you're doing more of the domestic load. But I think, particularly for me, that caused a lot of resentment. It caused a lot of frustration, and actually, it's because I wasn't really communicating that with my husband very well. And we need to sit down and talk about that. And then again, when I returned to work, that balance shifted again completely. And so I think it's just, if you can share the load, sit down and have those conversations with the people at home with you, or if you don't have a partner, or if you I suppose it doesn't even have to just be about the domestic stuff. It can just be sharing the load generally. Like, I've got a couple of amazing mum friends locally, and there have been mornings where we just turn up on each other's doorsteps in tears because we're just having one of those mornings with the toddlers. It's just been a write-off, and you just need to share that load. I think, it might be someone at home, a partner, talking about sharing the domestic load. It might be a friend who you can share that kind of, just that parenting load with, particularly in those early years. Or, I just think finding your safe people to kind of talk with and say, this is the bit that feels unmanageable, or this is the bit I'm finding hard. Can we work together on this? Can we share the load of this together? Just helps bring a bit of balance, I find. But I appreciate sometimes it's not always that easy. So I know lots of people don't have that village that is often banded about. I think, and then I think the big thing, I think, for me, is letting go of that guilt and shame. So anytime you feel that guilt or shame creeping up, whether that's because you are not parenting how you wanted to, or you shouted at the kids, or you feel guilty about going back to work, again, I think any kind of shame around your mental health, shame around your own emotions or your feelings towards motherhood. I think, like, it's so powerful to just identify it and just basically say that doesn't define you, and actually it's okay to feel that range of emotions. It's okay to love your children deeply and not always enjoy motherhood, or love your children deeply and hate doing craft time, or whatever it is, but I think just letting go, if you feel that kind of those waves of guilt and shame, because I think so much of motherhood is just laced with guilt and shame that we're not doing enough, we're not being enough, we're not present enough, and it's just too much pressure. So I think that's a big one as well, kind of just being able to kind of identify that and trying to work on letting that go. So I know, but I mean, I could talk about all of those in much more detail, but
it's so good though. I think there's such good tips, and it's a great place to start if you're struggling with this stuff. Just 3 or 4 really practical things you can do right now. And if you do have time and energy, I think these would be great things to journal around, those sort of 4 questions that you've asked. But if you don't, just think about them while you're rocking your little one to sleep, or cooking. Just being curious, having that check-in. It's so powerful, I think, just to stop for a moment and have that check-in and think, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling like that? And I look back on the early years and I could feel guilty. Like you're right, there's so many things that we feel guilty or ashamed of. And we do. We have that mum guilt about most things. But
Yeah.
I also recognise I was doing my best at the time. And I think that's really
Yeah.
powerful just to remind yourself, even the moment.
Yes.
Quite often what I'll do if I'm feeling overwhelmed or feeling bad at something, I'll just like sort of pat myself, do that sort of grounding, and I'll be like, "You're doing your best. You're doing your best right now. Maybe we could do better, but we will, and we will learn to. But in that moment, with what you've got, we're all doing our best, aren't we? And it'll never be perfect. There'll always be ups and downs, especially when you're little and you're exhausted.
Yeah, and best is enough. Like, you know, your best is enough. Like, it's more than enough for your kids. Oh, always more than enough, you know. And I think it's just, reframing your thinking, and that's hard. That takes a lot of practice, I think. But I think it's to just start recognizing those feelings and think, okay, why do I feel like that? Why am I feeling guilty? Like, have I actually done anything wrong? Probably not. Therefore, I'm telling myself a kind of lie, or something that is a societal pressure or a cultural pressure or whatever. And telling yourself, grounding yourself, and then saying, I am doing a really great job. I'm a great mum. I love my kids. My kids love me. I'm doing the best I can.
Yes, and we're talking about you. If you're listening, you are doing amazing. You are a great mum.
Yes,
your kids,
you're a great mum.
Love you, and yes, you're doing amazing. And like we can definitely compare, can't we? I think that can be a big thing, especially with social media or like toddler groups.
Oh yeah,
I'm glad I'm past the toddler group stage, to be honest. Like they were a lifesaver in a way, just getting out and seeing people, but they can be hard, can't they? Just I really got bored of talking about sleep and weaning and who's taking their first step and all that stuff. And it can always be like a bit of a competition, can't it? I mean, they all get there. They all get there. They all get out there.
They do. And I think, I would say if you're going to a toddler group that's making you feel lousy, don't go. Like there are better ones out there. I've got some lovely ones that I go to with my daughter, and they're I never come away from them feeling rubbish. And I think if you are listening to this now and you are going to a group that makes you feel lousy about being a mum, leave. Don't go back. Find a different group.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to summarize the points that you make, because I think they're so good. So the first thing you said is getting curious, just noticing how you're feeling, where those pressure points are. I love what you said about if you're struggling with anger and rage. I think we can all get to that point as mums of little ones. It's a sign of your unmet needs. So maybe just thinking about what are my unmet needs and being curious about that. And that's really important. I love that you brought that up. And maybe the feelings of frustration around that juggle, those pulls on you. And then that's what leads on to the next one. What will make the most difference right now? I think that's a great question to ask yourself, because we quite often as women, we try and change everything at once and put a lot of pressure on ourselves in this area of our life. But what are those couple of little tweaks that will make the most difference? So cleaner, that's a lifesaver. Even like if you can't afford 3 days childcare, pay for like an afternoon. Like getting a few hours to yourself can be life-changing, can't it? And I was thinking of that kind of like hierarchy of needs, like Maslow's hierarchy, and we could say, have a nice bubble bath and cook yourself some nice healthy food. But if you're not getting sleep or feel lonely, if your basic needs aren't getting met, you're not going to have time to think about doing a face mask. So thinking about how can you get those basic needs met and feel safe in your body and feel supported and connected and well nourished before you can start to think about those things. But there will be time in the future, I promise. It does get easier.
It does. It really does.
And then once you've identified what those things are, it's then thinking about who can you ask for help, isn't it? Who can help you? Your partner, your friends, your family. And just trying to let go of that guilt and shame, because it is never helpful. Choosing, we just break that off you right now, really. Like it's never helpful, and you're doing amazing. So there's such good points, and we just really encourage you to give yourself a little bit of time to think about them, because you deserve that time and that care for yourself, and things can get better. But also recognizing the absolute miracle and wonder and beauty of motherhood as well.
Yes, exactly, because there are lots of beautiful bits in it as well, and it's leaning into being, it's okay to feel both, I think, isn't it? It's to see that beauty, but also to go, this is messy and it's hard.
Absolutely. And hopefully from what you've spoken to us about, Hannah, we can start to then understand why it feels so hard and have that bit extra compassion for ourselves, thinking about the impact, the changes it's had on our body and our mind and everything.
It's massive. Massive.
Oh, amazing. Oh, that's been so interesting. And like you said, we could carry on for hours,
I know,
but
I could talk about this forever.
it's so good, so good. So if people would like to carry on talking to you and find out more about what you do, about your services, how can we stay in touch? Where's the best place for us to find you?
So my I obviously have my sleep stuff, and I'm on social media. So I'm on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Sleep Coach is my Instagram handle. And that really, I mean, I do lots of sleep stuff on there, obviously share lots of sleep stuff, but I also do, I try and do it every Monday. It's usually every Monday I'll do like a mental health Mondays post as well, where I'll talk about anything really to do with maternal mental health or things like matrescence, kind of just general motherhood. And then I also post about sleep stuff. So I'm on Instagram or on my website, which is dusktodawnsleep.com. And yeah, there's information there about a bit more about me and my training and how I trained as a sleep coach, my approaches, packages, one-to-one packages. I've got a guide on there, a 4th trimester guide, which is not any sort of sleep coaching per se. It's more about understanding what's normal in those early months of having a newborn baby and what to expect sleep wise. But I also pepper that with lots of mental health stuff as well. And yeah, I think you can contact me on my website. There's a contact me form if you've got any questions. On Instagram, my messages are always open. I'm always happy to chat. So yeah.
Amazing.
That's it, really.
I love your Instagram. It looks beautiful, but there's also so much good stuff there for mums at every stage. Or if you know a mum, like the more we can understand how to support each other, that's so important. And I know, like, for us, we're really fortunate to be part of church communities. And I remember when my babies were born, our church is just having a meal rota and bringing around meals for us. And it was one of my favourite things about having babies, like people just lining up with these beautiful meals and puddings, had the best puddings. So if you know a new mum, just take her meals. She will be forever thankful.
Don't go around to hug the baby. Go take the mum something. Go and hug the mum. Go and do her laundry. We went down to see some friends at the weekend, and she's 37 weeks pregnant, and I did she just washed all her baby clothes, and I just sat there and ironed them all for her and put them into piles, because I thought that's the most helpful thing I can do, isn't it? Is I can organise her baby clothes for her, because she's got 2 other children, she's got no time. So I was like, let me do your ironing and sorting.
What a gift.
And I think, so that's the kind of stuff I think mums need. They don't need you to do and just cuddle the baby and coo over the baby, and
think about what
just check in what the mum needs as well.
Nap, do her dishes, anything like that. Yes, absolutely. Oh, Hannah, thank you so much. It's been so good to chat about this stuff. It is so important, and it's really you've educated me. So thank you for your time. We'd love to know, just for fun, because we love to talk about food here as well as sleep and all these other important things. What would you choose to have for your last meal on earth?
So I think if it was my last meal on earth, I would have something cooked by my mum, because I think there's something, we're talking about motherhood, aren't we? And I think I'm very fortunate that I've got a really great relationship with my mum. I know that's not always the case for people, and but I feel very fortunate. And actually, she's a brilliant cook as well, which always helps. So she cooks an amazing chili salmon dish, and I think that, with some nice fresh green beans, crunchy green beans, a nice big glass of Sauvignon Blanc. Sorry, I know you're not drinking, Jo.
I'm out of watering.
But I think that's what it would be. It'd be my mum's my mum's home cooking, kind of bringing that comfort and the good taste as well. So
that's so lovely. As we've been talking about mums, that you choose to have something that your mum made. That's a really beautiful note to end on.
Yeah, and it's good food. She's a good cook, my mum. So
sounds delicious. Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Hannah.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
All right, take care.
You too.